Hello and welcome to the inventory webinar. My name is Rory. Today we're going to go through Docket Manager as it pertains to the inventory option on the left-hand side of the navigation menu. We're going to talk about stocks, supplies, and how they interact on the purchase order, as well as what that looks like at the order item level within production, and how we can manage inventory, how we can create items that are utilized for pricing, not specifically for inventory, but if we want to utilize them for inventory, how that will all take place. So let's get into this from a standpoint of the first item, which would be on the left-hand side, inventory and stock. There are many ways to get stocks in the system. We can enter them manually by hitting new. We can export an existing list if you have one from this screen. If you go to settings and the bottom row dockets, stock right here, there's also a stock import option available to you. So you could import a stock CSV list. That list does need to be formatted for Docket Manager. If you're looking for information on that, suggest you go to articles and type in stock import CSV. That'll bring up our import article. This is broken down with all of the required fields that are marked in blue. No highlight is not required. And then there's a list of all of the columns that are in the spreadsheet file, the template file, additional details, and any max character values that might apply as well. So there's examples in here and some brief descriptions of what these different fields do, whether or not they need to be true or false in some areas. And at the very bottom, you'll see the CSV file that is available. This file is the same as if you were to export your stock list. It has the same headers. So if you wanted to do it here, you would have context for different stocks that already exist in your site, and it might lead you down a better path. But this stock CSV template is also available at the article level. When we're entering in a stock, we can hit new if we're doing it manually, and we could say that this was 120 pound gloss cover. The configuration setup at the top is fairly simple. Choosing a supplier. The supplier code is the item number from your supplier. The weight field is a way to just organize and find stocks that are of like weights. Same thing with size. The size will bring in the parent size of the sheet into a quote or an order as the run size. So we want to make sure we have that correct. That is pricing specific because we're creating an imposition when we're using stock. Color and finish here. So if you don't see like the color that you're looking for or the finish size, any of these options right here that have this plus sign, you can add them on the fly. So you can hit this and you can add a color, just hit save. That'll add it to the table here as well as the table in the background where all of those colors and finishes, sizes, and weights are managed. Multi-part refers to whether how many parts this stock is. So it's set as a default for 1 for new sites. So that'll already be defaulted. You would only change this if it's a 2, 3, or a 4-part set. So most of the time we could just leave this as 1. M-weight will not play into any pricing calculations unless you are setting up for a web press where you would choose weight here in pricing. So if you want to put this in informationally, that is totally fine. Otherwise, if you're using price by piece, linear feet, or square feet, this will not have any bearing on pricing or calculations within the system. The caliper field can be utilized to drive lift load times at the press level. So if you are charging for time on the press, or if you're just tracking time on the press, the caliper is what's utilized from the paper to say this many inches fit into a lift, and the system will look at the caliper of the stock to figure out how much time is necessary or how many lifts are necessary. And at the press level, you can dictate how much time it would take to reload the paper tray. So that's where this could come in handy. GSM, much like M-weight, is not calculation based. Online name refers to web to print, and stock tags are just a great way to keep track of certain stocks that are alike. So we could say this is digital, and then we could find this amongst other stocks that share the same tag. When you're setting up the paper, obviously configuration is very important, but also the pricing section very important. The different options here are piece, linear, square, and weight. For digital and offset, you're going to go towards piece. So it's every piece of paper that it's being priced by, I should say. Linear and square feet are utilized in wide format. I see more so square feet being used, but certain customers do have a need for linear feet, so it is offered. And then if you're setting up a web press, you're going to utilize weight. So if this is a 120 pound 12 by 18 gloss cover, we'll say price by piece. And more times than not, when we're starting out, we would put in the price of the stock right here. I see this happen repeatedly. This is the price per. So what is the pricing based on? How many pieces? If we put this in, we're not going to get pricing the right way. So normally what we see is price per thousand. And the reason that this just isn't a static item is that if you're using linear or square feet, you're not pricing by per thousand. You're pricing by perhaps the total linear feet of a roll or the total square footage of a roll. So for price by piece, we want to put 1,000 in here. And then in the price scales, this is where the cost of the stock is going to go from your supplier. So we'll hit new. You can type in, if you have one row of information here, you can type in any number. We used to type 99999. You can also just put one and then the cost of the stock per thousand. So let's say it's $68 per thousand, and there's one quantity up to one and beyond. Don't worry about book cost. We can hit save from that level on. So again, what I was mentioning is if there's one row in a table in Docket Manager, and this is system wide, if it says quantity up to one and there's one row, it's up to and beyond. If this said 99999, it'd be up to that and before that and beyond. This could say 5. It could say 102, whatever you want to do. I utilize 1 just as a shortcut. It's one keystroke. It lets me know that that's all encompassing for everything, and it's not specific to a certain use case in the system. Whereas if it said 500, it might be specific to that value. So one row in a table up to this value and beyond. You can add additional price scales if you like, but we usually just start out with 1 because you have one cost from your supplier, and maybe you would build out a second one if you were buying more stock. If they offered you a discount, you could, get that price break built into the system. Next up is printed markup scale. This can be set as a default in the system. We normally see this now about 35 to 45%, sometimes 50. So we have it defaulted in new sites to 40% now, I think. This one's set at 45. Again, quantity up to 1, mark up this stock per thousand price when we're printing on it, 45%. Okay. Blank markup stock scale. If we're selling this paper blank, we can mark it up more. Normally, this is just a pass through. We're marking up the stock 40 to 45%, and then we're making more profit margin at the press and at the bindery level, maybe pre-press, different operations there. If we're selling the stock blank, we're missing out on those opportunities. So we want to mark up the stock more and not just give it away for almost free. This package quantity field, if used on its own, is just informational. Okay. So we can say 250 sheets per package, and that is just informational. There's no other functionality that's happening if this is used by itself. If you fill in this value and then hit price by carton, it will charge in increments of this value. So if a quote or an order called for 252 sheets of stock, and this was marked to yes, it would charge them automatically for 500 sheets because it would charge in increments of 250. So I would suggest utilizing this price by carton toggle with a value here on your specialty stocks that you have to purchase in certain increments that you might not use again. It will charge the second, if someone else uses it and there's enough available, it will charge them for a full carton as well. So you can, you're never going to get hung out when, you buy something for a job that the customer's asking for, and then you're losing money on it. You're actually going to make more money on it if you run it twice. This add to price toggle can be marked as yes or no. And by default, any quote or order when you're using the stock will add the stock price to that quote or order. This is actually add to product price. And when we look at product pricing in the system, we can set a product price to say up to 500 pieces, they're $1 a piece, but we want to charge the stock plus markup on top of that product price. So when you're setting up your stocks, this can be yes or no. It's not going to cause any harm. If you see that it's marked as no, don't get worried. If you've been running the system for a little bit, it will always add, the stock will always add to the quote or order price. By default, this is just for product pricing, and that's outlined in this tooltip right here as well. It talks about product pricing. We're directing all revenues in the system to GL revenue accounts. When you first get your system, I have some example GL accounts created. Those can be updated. They're in settings, accounting, financial. But this can all be managed from that page as well, or you can manage them one at a time. The way that we're working with cutting when it comes to cut sheet or digital and offset printing in Document Manager is at the stock level. We're saying how many sheets of this specific stock fit into a lift on the guillotine cutter. So for 120 pound, we might reduce this down to say 200 sheets of this paper fit into the lift. Cut cost, anywhere you see cost in Document Manager, that is internal cost or perceived cost of labor or cost of goods. Anywhere you see price is customer facing. So this would charge $1 per cut based on 200 sheets per lift. If there's multiple lifts needed, it'll just multiply that dollar out and the number of cuts based on the imposition. And we can look at that when we create a quote item here in a moment. Inventory level, we can mark in minimum. So we could say we want a minimum of 250 sheets in inventory, or say 500, whatever it might be. And if we want to have an inventory warning show up in the system. Now, this inventory warning will come into play once you post the order, because we need a final point in time to say no other changes can be made to the order. And that is what happens. And that's what takes place when we post an order. It gets marked as completed and it gets locked down. No future changes can be made. So that's when you'll see the inventory warning when you're posting the order before you send the invoice. Location is just where this stock is within your warehouse, or where it should be. We know things have a tendency to get pulled off the shelf to be used and then maybe not put back exactly where they were. So as last seen, this is where it was. So we hope to keep things as organized as possible, but things are moving quickly. So we'll turn this off for this stock. I would suggest, if you're just starting out in the system and you're looking to run inventory to get a feel for how the system works, my best advice would be to set up inventory for your house stocks that you're running all of the time, maybe a couple of them, just to get a feel for it, and then take what you've learned from that experience and expand it maybe into all stocks or the stocks that are necessary to run inventory on. I would turn this off to begin with, because you don't want to have unnecessary errors coming in, especially in the accounting side. If they're going to post invoices, they're getting errors that maybe aren't real because you're not actually tracking inventory, and those errors don't always pertain directly to the individual who's doing that operation. So just to minimize errors when you begin, leave this off. It can always be turned back on. You can come into this view and turn it on. If we hit save here, I'll show you. You can also go back a level to the stocks. And if you wanted to select all or select a certain number of stocks and hit bulk actions, we can turn that inventory warning on for all or some using bulk actions. There's a number of different areas here as well that can be adjusted for all or multiple, or just one stock as a shortcut. Again, bulk actions right here. And that can be utilized throughout the system for different use cases as well. Very helpful feature. For example, when we're talking about wide format, we won't build a whole new wide format stock, but I'll show you what this would look like. This is a linear foot wide format stock. And as we go into actions edit in the top right to get this to this view, we can see we're pricing by linear feet. It's 38 by 1800 inches, and that translates to 675 linear feet. And right here in the price scale, this would be the price of the entire roll. So I was testing something with that. That's why it said $1. But what this translates to for wide format is $275 per 675 linear feet. Same thing would hold true for square feet. So if we went here, and I think this one is square feet. Yep, this 4 mil vinyl. Actions edit. $300 per 675 square feet. You could enter one here per 1 square foot, but then this number would have to be specific to 1 square foot. I prefer, in my experience, utilizing the total number of square feet or linear feet, and then the total price of that square footage or that roll, because that information is then visible at first glance. So you don't have to look and say, all right, how many square feet is the roll, and break down this measurement or look anywhere else. This works really well. It can also be ordered in increments of a full roll as well. So just a couple different options specific to stock setup and how that price per could be utilized and what the differences are. If we go into our 120-pound gloss cover, back into this stock, this was the screen that we were presented with after we hit save. We were in this screen right here. We hit save, and it brings us to this screen right here. At the bottom of this screen, we can see monthly usage, which will start to fill out, but we need a record to begin with for this stock in the system. Okay, so we can bring in stock one of two ways. The first way would be to go to inventory. Inventory, I'm just in another tab now. You have your whole list of stocks here. Go to purchase order, and we could create a mock purchase order in the system. New supplier name, you could just leave it generic if you wanted to. I would leave a note that this maybe is inventory replenishment or initial inventory, something like that, so you'd know exactly what you did here. Because the system needs to know how much stock you have on the floor at the time when you're going to start running inventory. And what you can do is go add per stock, find all the stocks that you currently have in inventory. And I'll just use this one, for example. And instead, you're pretending that you're ordering it on using this method. So you would put in how many sheets you had on the floor currently. So if you had 8,500, and then you could receive this in. You could hit received, and it would fill out that amount, hit add. Let's just add in, let's say we had 200 sheets of this stock. Received, 200. The status will change to received. We'll save this. And then if we go back to this stock level in the other tab, refresh this page, you'll now see that there's an inventory section at the bottom of this page, and each of the replenishments and or depletions is going to be logged here. So we have 200 on hand, 200 available, value left based on the price that was entered into the system at that time. And you can see here that the PO has been received, and it's PO number 19. So we have stock in the system. That's one way of doing this, utilizing the purchase order. The other option would be to go to settings, back into stock where we were earlier, where we looked at stock import. This is to bring stocks in initially. This is to update stock pricing if you have a spreadsheet from your supplier. This is to bring stock levels in or to update stock levels, stock inventory level CSV. To access this, if we go to articles and we search for stock inventory level CSV, there is a separate CSV article available to you with a template at the bottom. And that would also bring in those levels for you. So a couple different ways to do it. But in order to start tracking inventory, you're going to need a record of that stock being in the system. Otherwise, this section does not exist. Now, you can have stocks in the inventory section in stock that you're not tracking inventory. They still belong here. It's just that the inventory functionality is a separate piece to this, and it's an optional piece as well. You don't, just because something's here doesn't mean it has to be tracked as inventory, and you don't need a starting record for everything. But if you want to know how much stock you have on hand or available, what the value left is, what jobs ran against it, then you would definitely need to create a record of that stock being in the system via the purchase order and receiving it in, or using the stock inventory level CSV. So now that we have stock in the system, let's take a look at how that comes out of the system. So let's go to whether you go to quotes and then convert it to an order, or if you just go right to an order, it's going to do the same thing. Okay, so let's go new order, and I'm just going to label this as a rack card, which makes sense for something a little bit heavier. We'll leave it on walk-in, and we'll choose a contact, and we'll hit save. Go new, quick add, rack card. Say it's one-sided, group is digital for the press. We're going to run it on digital color machine. It's going to be one sheet or one original, single-sided. Here's where you're choosing the stock. This is where you can utilize the tags that we talked about. So if you know it's digital and you have stocks tagged as digital, perfect. You can say gloss. You could say, no, I need 1218. Or you can just type in the name of the stock, whatever you like to do. But those are some of the different options that we had filled out to show you how those operate. Check the box next to that stock, hit add. We're going to need an in position in order to get this to price out correctly, as well as to pull inventory. So 12 by 18 run size based on the parent size of the sheet, flat size 4 by 9 for a rack card, and then we can say how many that we need. Let's say that we need, if they're 4 up, we need 2,000. Hit save. Once this item is in the system, your CSR or account rep would be either converting this to an order or creating the order right from here. They're going to be printing a work order. Check this box, hit work order, walking that work order into pre-press, hitting move, and saying this is now in graphics or whatever your production queues are. So just going through some normal everyday situations to kind of put this in context. Your team is going to be viewing the production workflow. And in the graphics queue, you can see that we have this rack card available right here. Now, we offer a specialty, I wouldn't say specialty, but a specific production queue to show what is, what is necessary for like a production manager to be using on a daily basis. Whether you want to put items in approved to print, so it's like a final check before they go out to print. Maybe you're checking the specs, checking the quantities. If it's a mailing, make sure the mailing list is specific. You're not printing way more than you need. Make sure that you've got the right information from the customer. So these things might move to approved to print. This is one place we could utilize this, but you could also utilize this view that we're showing here to say inventory status and to make sure that we have enough paper to run this job and other jobs that are currently in this queue as well. So what you can do if you had multiple items here, let me see if I can find a couple more. Yeah, perfect. Let's move these over as well, just to kind of show what this would look like. So we've got a number of different items. Again, it doesn't matter what queue they're in as long as this view is available and set to the queue. If you want to have it say approved to print, or if it's somewhere else, whatever you want to do, totally fine. You could select all of these items and see here this inventory status is currently marked as unallocated. You could do this one at a time to mark these as allocated to see if there's enough paper, or you can select all of them, bulk actions, items. Again, we're using bulk actions for multiple pieces. And then inventory status. Sorry, I had to find it there for a sec. If you mark inventory status allocated for all items, the system will return information, and it will allocate if you have enough stock. If you don't have enough stock, it'll be marked as required order. So you can see here there's a number of different options available. And what those refer to are unallocated, means the inventory has not been used or reserved for this item, and there's no impact to stock levels. So as we're preparing the job, we're making sure that, again, maybe we're confirming quantity. Customers like to change quantity, even though they ask us to quote 3 different quantities, they're going to choose a fourth one when it's time to print it. Just make sure you got the right amount. So you're not allocating stock against that job until you've got that final piece of the puzzle ready to go. So that's unallocated. It's kind of in flux. It's not ready to run yet. We don't have a firm commitment on quantity from the client. Unallocated. Perfect. Allocated is inventory has been set aside for this item, and this will have impact on available stock levels. Pulled means inventory has been used for this item, and this will impact available stock levels. So that means that we've run the job. The item will automatically get marked as pulled when you post it as well. So you don't have to go through and mark everything as pulled. It's when it's complete, it'll be out of the system, the inventory is gone. Requires order, it means just that. Inventory is out of stock and needs to be ordered. So we didn't have enough for any of these items, and it shows how many sheets are necessary for each item. So how that information transfers over to the production manager or whoever's job it is to find out how much paper do we need to run the jobs that we currently have ready to go is in inventory on a purchase order. They would come in, maybe it's 3 o'clock, whenever you're doing your paper order, hit new. It gives you the next PO number, choose your supplier. We'll just put sample, hit save. And then instead of going to add per stock, which brings up the entire stock list where you can just choose whatever you want, that works great in some cases. But what I would suggest doing is hit add per item. And this will send out a request in the system to find all of the stocks that currently require order. So there are the 3 of them, and the item numbers match up exactly to these item numbers right here. So not only will it be specific to the item number at this level, but when we hit add, you can expand this down on the purchase order to see where the paper was allocated to, what items it was specific to, order number, item name, and customer name, and the amount of stock that was necessary for that specific job. And that's for all 3 of these. So this is a great way to organize what needs to be ordered on a daily basis in kind of order in a sequence of events. So this PO would then go out to the supplier, print PO, email PO. This would be marked as sent. And before we do that, let's just go to our stocks, specifically the 120-pound gloss cover. So you can see the inventory is now filling out. We haven't received it in, so nothing has changed here. We still have 200 on hand, 200 available, and the order item hasn't come through yet because it hasn't been marked as allocated. So if we were to send this, it would be marked as sent. And it's out to the supplier. They're going to bring that paper in and deliver it to us. Shipping and receiving is going to come into this PO later on and mark this as received. These quantities will fill in as they were specific to the ordering quantities. If they're partials, you can adjust this, and the balance will be marked as back ordered. We'll receive it all in. And then if we go back to this stock at that point, this should fill out with a little bit more detail to say on PO 19, we brought in 200. We had 200 available and on hand. And then on PO 20, we had placed an order for 1,000, and order item number right here is utilizing 505 sheets for item number 11151. And if we look at 11151, There's 505 in cost for sheets for cost, sorry. Sheets for cost, sheets for price, and now this is marked as allocated not only here, and you can see that it was received on the purchase order. So if your team has this job at a press and they have access to view this, instead of coming up to you, if they see that it's been received, they can go to the shipping and ask them for the stock, or more than likely, they'll still come up to the front and ask you, and you can walk with them to shipping and show them where the paper is. I'm not making any promises that it's going to solve any problems, but at least you'll know where the stock is and that it's been received, or that the PO has still been marked as sent and we're still awaiting stock. Also on this view, you'll now see all of these have been allocated. And again, the allocated status is inventory has been set aside for this item, and it will have impact on available stock levels. And we can see that, I'm sorry, right here. On hand stays the same. Available is adjusted because we haven't marked these as pulled yet. So let's go to our order in production. So this would be running through the system here. This would get printed. We'll go to the order level of this. This would get printed. It would get finished. We'd be ready to send out the invoice. Actions, post. That will lock this down and mark it as completed. And in doing so, if we go into this item, I think we can see it from this level. Yep. Inventory status will now be marked automatically as pulled, which also means at the stock level, 120-pound gloss cover, it will have an impact on hand levels as well as available levels. So now there is that amount available to us. So that is the process for not only bringing in initial inventory, but how we can then deplete from inventory if stock's available. If stock's not available, we can allocate stocks. And if it's not available, it'll be marked as requires order. We can bring that in on a purchase order, and then we can deplete from that when we hit post. That is the stock side of Docket Manager and how it pertains to inventory. On supplies, supplies can be anything that you're just ordering on a daily basis, and they might not be tied to a specific job. What this offers you is, at a glance, information on what was ordered, who ordered it, how much they paid, where they got it from the last time that it was necessary, instead of just having paper in a file cabinet somewhere. You know, somebody who ordered it last time might not be available, or they might be out, and you could find out, all right, we need to order plates again. Excellent. So here are plates, here's our pricing, here's where we get them from. All that information is right here, and then there's inventory set up here. Now, how are we running inventory on a supply? Because we can't use a supply at a quote or an order level. So let's back up just a second, and we'll take a look at the supply window first. So supplies, I guess a good way to put it is supplies can be something that you're just ordering, and maybe it's not specific to the job level and you're not keeping track of it because there's no depletion. And it's just something that you order, and when you need more, you can just order more. That's a supply. A supply can also be tracked via inventory, and I'll show you how to do that secondarily. So you'd fill out the supply name, who the supplier was. Let's just go to an existing record to save time. We'll go to offset plates, and we'll go actions, edit. Offset plates, they're coming from Plate Company. The supplier code or item number, how many are in a package, minimum level, price per one I have it set at. So I'm saying we're ordering one pack of 24, and quantity of one is $250 for 24 plates. That's how that's being referenced. And where that information is being used, if this is just being set up to order here on a purchase order, let me go to a pending one so we don't start a new one. Here are offset plates, and we can say price per one. I think we need to update that price. Yeah, that was updated in the past. So one package of offset plates is $250. So that's your terminology, how you want that to work. If you want it to be one plate is this much, then in the supply offset plates, you would say package quantity is one here, and then how much is one plate, and then you'd have to enter in the amount that you want to order, the amount of plates. But if you know that they come in packages of 24 and 24 plates is $250, then I would put it in this way. It all depends on how you're ordering things. So same way we can receive this in, and then it will be marked as part of the inventory, and that inventory can be found at the supply level right here. And this holds true for stocks and inventory. Once you have a record of them being in the system, you can make an adjustment. So if something wasn't right, if somebody used more than they should have, you can make a manual adjustment. But this button only exists once inventory has been brought into the system. So that's available too. So the way to tie supplies to an order so that they're depleting when an order is processed is that you will need a supply record first. So let's use offset plates as an example. So you need this built out in supplies. And then second piece of the puzzle is in settings, department items, because department items can be used on orders. We would create a department item specific to the use case of how that supply would be depleted from inventory. So this has the same exact name. It doesn't have to have the same name, but for organizational purposes, it would be very helpful. And if you've been creating department items, you know we usually go the name, the group, the department, and we hit save. In this case, we would tie this to a supply right here. So we would need a supply and we would need a department item, and it's a one-to-one relationship. So if you're doing something like comb binding, it would have to be the exact comb bind type, the color, the size, pitch, I believe, right? And the supply would have to be specific to that item and how you order that item. So it can't be just a department item for comb bind and then you have multiple supplies available. It's a one-to-one relationship, one department item to one supply. Set this here, hit save, and then whatever the lock to is how that supply will be depleted from inventory. And it's depleted once the order is posted as well. So if we had, let's see what we have for inventory. Sorry, let's go here to the supply. So we can see we have inventory listed, and to pull from inventory, the order would have to be posted. So on PO6, let's see, did we bring any in? No, we can run this through. We'll run this scenario. So here's an order. I'm just looking for an order item that I can repeat for us, just to save some time here. So actions, reorder. Account has a credit hold. Just one second. We're utilizing this for credit hold in accounting. I'll just turn this off. If you'd like to learn more about this side of things, join me in the accounting webinar. I'd be happy to show you the entire process. But to clear this error, let's do that. Reorder, and we should be good. So we're just creating an order, and this order has the department item offset plates set against it. This specific order requires 8 plates, 4 for the front, 4 for the back. It's a sheet-wise, 2 up 1117, and there's 4 sheets of 1117 necessary. So it needs 1 sheet-wise form in order to create this job. So we have plates. Remember, the lock to is how they deplete and also how they're set to price. So it all works out. You need 8 of them. That's going to charge the right amount to the customer. The pricing in the department item, this is important to realize as well. Sorry, let's go back. The pricing in the department item has to be set specifically how you want it to charge to the customer. It doesn't pull the pricing from the supply And the reason for that is you might be accounting for more than just what the price or the cost is in this field. It might be cost of labor, cost of material, cost of processing, chemistry, whatever it might be, the machine, the plate maker. So you have to set pricing here, cost and price, and then you also have to do that and set a separate cost at the supply level. So just a heads up there. Just thought of that. So if we run this through and we were to invoice this and post this order, actions post, that's when that supply would come out. And this is 11161. So if we look here, we refresh this page. We're still running against inventory that was prior, 11161. So we're still pulling from where it's available. We brought some in up here on this PO and some here. So we're pulling from the first in. And here's 11161. 8 came out of inventory and these numbers were adjusted. So other things to note on the purchase order. We talked about this a little bit, but we didn't go in depth with this. I'll just go to an existing PO. There's 2 options for ordering stock. Again, add per stock. That's going to bring up the entire stock list. If you were to do this, you could choose what you wanted, and you can just type in how many sheets of each one that you want to order. It'll pull from the cost that is associated with that stock, and this is free to order this way. That's one way, or like we did before, add per item. System will look for any order that items that require order. You can also order supplies and stocks on the same PO if you like. If you want to reduce the number of trucks coming in, if your supplier is giving you a good deal on boxes because you're ordering your paper from them, order them on the same PO. That's totally fine. So whatever we need here, you can see requires order, nothing. We can cancel that just to freely order whatever we want to do. So that is totally fine. Once the PO is sent, and you can go to actions, print PO or email PO, this would go to sent. And like we did when we received this in, check boxes here, receive, and that will bring that inventory into the system. A lot of times when I was ordering paper and or supplies, I wasn't sending this PO to my supplier. I would have their website up in a separate tab. I'd fill out the cart based on everything that I needed. And then I would mirror that order here on the PO so that accounting knew when that invoice came in. They could come right in and see the PO number. I would put that PO number on the order in the supplier's website. They could see that it was all received in. They could check the cost, make sure the prices all matched, and then they knew they were okay to pay that invoice. So that part of it comes into play as well if you're utilizing it just for that. I mean, that's a great step forward if you didn't have that all within the same system. If you're using this in tandem with that option to track inventory, that is a great way to do things as well. Excellent. So I just want to remind everyone that these webinars are being recorded. They are available under your name in recordings. Above that, you have the upcoming webinar calendar. This is available at any time throughout the month. We're scheduling out for next month, halfway through this month. So you don't have to wait for the email to come out, although I'm glad that people do sign up when they see that email. It's awesome. It's a good reminder to have. Just be aware, this is an ongoing calendar, so they can be accessed at any time under your name, upcoming webinars. The recording list is just that. This is a list of all of the webinars that have taken place, and this is not every single one, but the most recent for a topic. Numerous topics available. This instance of the inventory webinar will be uploaded here by the end of tomorrow, just to make sure it gets processed. And we'll have that available if you want to share that with anyone. These are just links to YouTube videos of the recording. So I want to thank everyone for joining me today and everyone watching possibly on the recording. I'm going to stop the recording now and we can talk about any questions anyone might have that is on the call. But thank you guys all for joining me.